On this week's podcast, I am talking with my friend and student Justine Blizzard about Reiki and Protestantism and just her experiences with the Protestant religion, and I'll weigh in with a bit of my own. This is how I was raised as well. So this series on religions is part of something that I was guided to create back in 2017. I started writing a book called All Roads Lead Home, and it's a book that is supposed to help us understand each other and our different religious and spiritual perspectives so that we can realize that no matter what name we use to call Source or God or Allah or Jehovah, life or universal energy, the universe, no matter what name we use, no matter what tradition we follow, we're all the same at our core, and we're all striving to do the same things. We're all striving to be good people and to connect with Source, with Spirit, with God. And so I'm really glad that you're here this week, Justine, to talk to us about this. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure. So before we go too far, I'll just let you know some of the things that we have coming up at the farm. I'm in the midst of teaching Reiki in the Asian time zone, and I'll be starting on Tuesday to teach Reiki Masters in an Asian and European friendly time zone. Please join us if you wish. The classes are not full. Those are online classes. They're evenings in Asia and early mornings in Australia. I'm also next weekend teaching a wonderful course on Campobello Island, Animal Reiki, and we'll actually be doing the class just right in the vicinity of the ocean. The oceans have been asking for some help lately, and so I've been guided to create a class on Campobello Island, beautiful, magical island, and we'll do the class Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We'll head out and visit with the whales. We're going to go out on a whale tour, and in addition, we may see puffins and razorbills and this sort of thing. So I'd love to have you join us. If you want to join us but can't come in person, get in touch with me. It is intended to be an in-person class, but it's not full at the moment, so we may be able to accommodate some online students. And that will be followed by an Animal Reiki Masterclass in August in the Australian friendly time zone, which is early mornings in Australia, very early mornings in Asia, evenings here in North America. I'll be teaching a Holy Fire 3 World Peace Karuna Reiki class. And that's a licensed class, as well as my own animal communication. And in October, I have a full lineup of classes. If you don't already get our newsletter, there's a link. Please go ahead and sign up so that we can stay in touch every week. And if you are looking to purchase the Reiki business book, there's also a link to how you can purchase that in the podcast through amazon.ca or .com. If you live somewhere else and aren't sure how to get it, go ahead and reach out to me and I'll get you connected. It is available in 40,000 retailers around the world in paperback, and it's available as an ebook as well. Justine, I know we're going to put your contact information in, but you don't have any classes scheduled at the moment, and
Correct.
but people can reach out to you
Yes.
if they're interested in classes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you also teach a fantastic class. I don't know, do you still teach the class about end of life support with Reiki?
Yeah. Reiki and palliative care. It's a workshop. We usually do it in small groups, and I do it with a, I can't say former partner, but a partner, a business partner, Jocelyn Douglas Trider, who we used to share a space with, and we
Right.
put this together. And
Yeah.
she comes from a nursing home background, and we thought we would put a course together, and it's been fairly well attended, and there's usually a lot of interest in it. But if you are interested, just have to get hold of me at Earthen Reiki Studio, and you can do that through Facebook.
Wonderful. We'll put your Facebook link as well, Justine. And yeah, thank you. That course is on my bucket list, and I think sometimes you teach it online, sometimes in
Yeah.
person, and I intend to take that as soon as it works in my schedule. So everyone, before we go too far, I'll just invite you to bring your hands together in Gasho with your thumbs at your heart and just breathe, activating your Reiki energy and your Reiki symbols and just breathing in the Reiki energy today and opening your mind and your body and your heart, your chakras, your spirit. As we listen to different perspectives around Reiki and religion, and specifically following the religions of the world peace grids, which say, may the followers of all religions and spiritual paths work together to create peace among all people on earth. I'm reminded that there are 7 billion people on the planet, and each one of us has a different perspective. And one day, as I was doing my self-Reiki and just thinking about that, I was shown that if God or Source or whatever name you want to use was an enormous ball of light in the center of the 7 billion of us, every one of us can see a slightly different angle. And yet each one of us is still seeing Source, God, Jehovah. And that when we can understand the angles and perspectives of others, we then can understand Source, our Father, with more depth and in its totality. So I invite you to listen today with an open heart and an open mind to another perspective. And as always, with the intention to learn and grow and understand each other. I'm just feeling the unification, consciousness flow between us as we realize that we are all one. And that we all have at our core this interest in serving others, this interest in connecting with God, with Source energy, and just doing well in the world. Thank you for being here today. Namaste and Amen. So Justine, I just want to start by letting the listeners know that one of the reasons I really wanted to interview you for this piece about Reiki and Christianity, in particular the Protestant religions, and understanding that we're not going to be able to cover all of the different aspects of Protestantism, but you have an Anglican background, I have a United Church background, and so we'll cover a few at least. But you were a big part of my healing and my understanding. I could never really get to Source. I could never get that spiritual connection in my church. And I don't think there's anything wrong with my church. I think there's a lot of people that did get to it in my church, but I didn't see that. And I had formed the belief that it wasn't possible to get a deep spiritual connection within a church setting. To me, the rules and some of the contrasts within the church were just too much for me to absorb and to wrap my head around. And you and your daughter, when you came and studied Reiki with me, really helped me heal that. I looked at the two of you and I went, wow, they did get that deep spiritual connection, and they got it through their church. And not only that was what I felt then led you to a Reiki class. And so you really helped change my perspective and my perception. Just seeing you, seeing that young woman, and I think she was just young when she started
Yep.
studying Reiki,
Yep.
and the two of you came, and it was so beautiful to share Reiki with you, and you helped me see how Reiki really did blend beautifully with religion, and so I thank you for that. And with that in mind, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about your spiritual traditions, what you follow, and your beliefs and your understandings, and and even some of the traditions, some of the celebrations, and this sort of thing. So just tell us about. And were you always part of the Anglican tradition?
No, I wasn't actually. I did come from, we didn't go to church every Sunday. I think that my mom went to church to sing.
Okay.
That was my impression. And my father didn't generally go. And that after he's passed, I realized how interesting that is. And I might get to that as we get moving further along. But when I did go to church, we actually went to a United Church because it was the closest one to us. And I, my parents, when both my sister and I got to our 10th birthday, we received a King James Version Bible. That's the one with the thous and the thy and saith.
I have one of those. I have
Yeah,
a few of those.
yeah, red letter edition.
I
And my
love the red
mother,
letter edition.
yeah, yeah. My mom used to take that to church to read when she read any passages for any services, because the Bible that they used in the United Church at that time was a New International Version or something else, didn't have the
Right.
red letters. And my mother came from a Methodist, very strict Methodist background.
Okay.
She was a very quiet lady, had very strong opinions about things. But I still think that she went to, they didn't talk a whole lot. I didn't think a whole lot about their beliefs, but they lived their beliefs, which was something I didn't notice until I grew up. But saying that, when I was 16, I got myself a job at a summer camp, which was an Anglican summer camp. One of my friends got me a job as a lifeguard. And this was my dream job. I got my qualifications, the minimum qualifications to work as a lifeguard, and I wanted to work in a summer camp. And this opportunity to work at a church camp happened. And I thought that was great because I really wanted to learn more about our Creator. And I did pray, I think. I didn't think a whole lot about Jesus or the apostles or prophets or anything. And when I prayed, I called the Creator Sir.
Oh, that's new. I haven't heard that, but I like it.
So obviously, I felt a connection. I had
Okay.
a connection, and I did so in a very respectful way. And in an awe, in awe, I suppose would be it. So I met people like me, and I learned a great deal about Christianity from a slightly different, and I'm going to use the term religious point of view, because we did have a chapel there. We had services there, but the staff were young. The music was contemporary with guitars and stuff. And it was completely different than the opera and piano and Handel that I was brought up with in my home. And I learned more. And at that time, and I got baptized that summer, in the August of that summer.
And what tradition did you say that one
It
was?
was
Anglican.
it was
Okay.
Anglican tradition. And they have articles of faith that I had to read and understand and say, I got it. And I spent most of my summer really questioning them, because some of the stuff in there, I what? But I went along with it because it was very inspirational. And as I grow older, I understand the articles of faith much more, and they're really too bad. There's always things about sin and things in there. And I was at the time in a relationship with somebody who did sell drugs and
Oh,
hung
wow.
around with people that were not really people I should be hanging around with, if I can use that term. But they were, I think, an actual fact in retrospect, and probably I thought this at the time, I was able to lead them. They didn't understand, this group of people, how I could live in a time and hang around with them and not take drugs. That's where I first became an Anglican, and I didn't attend church services. I hung out with my Anglican friends at youth group. And it wasn't until I joined the choir and went to church in order to sing that I started to really take part in a regular church service. And Anglicanism, in many senses, is close to a Catholic church service. There are some, yeah, in the, if I may say, the pomp and circumstance of it, and the fact that we wear clothing to cover the clothing that we're wearing. And I'm figuring it's so that we're all uniform and we don't cause attention to ourselves, but it's what we sing, what we believe that comes out, that people are to listen to. They're very archaic outfits, but that's the way it is. But yeah, there's a procession in, there's a procession out, there's candles lit, there's specific written words that you follow throughout a service, and they have been updated and modernized, and you have choices of what services you want. But it is a little different than some Protestant religions where they pray off the cuff, where they are not using books all the time. They might have an order of service, that what songs you're singing, but that there's a mixture of music that happens. And but there's also a comfort in knowing what words are coming up.
My friend explained that to me, that she had decided, actually, she left the Baptist tradition and decided to adopt the Anglican because she loved that it was always the same, that the
Yep.
service was always the same and you could depend on it, and it was the same, and she felt that it connected her with the history, the
Yes.
the fact that people have been saying that same service for centuries.
Yep. Yep. Since
And
15 something.
yeah.
And the words are beautiful. There's descriptions in there, and but they uphold the awesomeness and the worship of our Creator, of God. And um, that's what I find comforting in it. But every once in a while, it what am I doing? Why can't, and
Feels a
I'm
little
a
stifling.
it does. I'm a lay reader in my church,
Okay.
and that means that I just help the minister prepare for the services. At this particular time that we're in now, our communion service, which is a bread in the form of unleavened, like it's a wafer,
Yeah.
and wine. We just use the bread. There's no sipping of the wine, no dipping of the wine, that type of thing. But so that's what a lay reader would help with. So now it's just readings and saying the prayers. And when I get the prayers to read and I go up to read them, I so often want to do, as we do in Reiki when we're doing invocations, is wing it and add our own things. And because you're in your gowns and you're very rigid about things, and you stand up and sit down, and it's an exercise routine. Some days you're up and down a
My
lot, but
father calls it Catholic aerobics
yeah,
whenever
yeah,
we go to a wedding.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I sometimes I will add a name or something to a prayer list, or say something. I think that my minister, my rector, would probably have no issue with it, but she might panic a little bit if I went off script. Sometimes you get moved by things, but because you're in this, you can't. I do know some Anglican friends of mine who go to a church where they do open prayer,
Okay.
and they just leave time for people just to call out and say their prayers, or that type of thing. But that's few and far between, I believe, when it comes to the Anglican service.
Yeah, for the most part, it is really
Yeah,
scripted, isn't it?
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, we did attend an Anglican church out here for a little while. The sweetest little church. And
yeah.
anyway, they tore the church down, so it's not there anymore. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was quite lovely, but I also hadn't been in it for a very long time. Yeah. But you did find your connection with God, with the
Yeah.
Creator in this. And that was very evident to me when you showed up in class. And I think when you showed up, I was in a place where maybe I had been judged a little bit from some people within the Christian community for being a Reiki practitioner. I think that had a lot of layers to it. I think that I expected to be judged, so therefore I was judged,
Mhm.
and I probably still had some judgment within myself that I needed to heal. And I noticed that there is very little judgment now. In fact, recently my mother sent one of my podcasts to her new minister, because he
Excellent.
was now I don't know if this is complimentary. She said he was having trouble sleeping. She said, I sent him your podcast. I said, here, listen to her voice, that'll put you to sleep. But I took
Yeah.
it. I was very flattered at the same time that that my mom, who also goes to church to sing and is in the choir and has been at various times the junior choir director and the choir director, and I was very involved in the United Church. I taught Sunday school, and I had perfect attendance for 18 years until I went to university. And but all the while that I lived at home and went to the church, and nobody ever had to force me to go to church. I actually really enjoyed going. I just found at one point that the container wasn't it wasn't bringing me that close connection with spirit that I wanted. And and yet I am aware that many other people found that close connection
Mhm.
through
Mhm.
the very same church that I wasn't able to find it through. And I think sometimes that's even why people go to other religions and whatnot. And you have an interesting story. I think you also, it's not uncommon for me to get students who are practicing Christian students. Of course, Reiki and Christianity goes together beautifully. And yet many, not many, but enough, are concerned that they will be judged by the other members of their congregation, of their
Mhm.
church. And I think you expected that, but quite the opposite happened. Can you tell us
Yeah.
about that?
I always was a little concerned because I knew that I was about Jesus's work,
Yeah.
that that this is healing and this is what we are called to do. And I knew that, but I also thought to myself, because in Catholicism, as well as in Anglicanism, in order to be, there's confession, and you use a confessor, a
You have
person.
confession? I would have changed to Anglican to become Anglican just for that. I was always jealous that you
It's a
could
little bit
confess
different.
and be absolved, and we had to carry our guilt the rest of our lives.
Sorry.
Yeah,
It is different. I know
yeah.
that Catholic churches now, some of them have it within their service rather than having to go to a booth.
Like whether
But
doing it
yeah,
individually, right?
yeah, yeah. But we do confess our sins, and we confess our sins to the minister of our church. And the minister of our church absolves us of the sins.
I was always jealous of that, Justine, that you
It
guys got
is,
to do that. Yeah.
but we don't need the middle person. I don't know. I'm sure I don't have the Bible memorized, but I'm pretty sure that Jesus didn't like he wanted to us to go directly
Yeah.
to God with nothing in between. And I've always felt that. So that's one of the things that sometimes I think uh, we're not so great as to be able to gather the crumbs under your table. And I'm thinking, no, God created me like him. And I understand that God is bigger. He is, or he or they or whatever. I'll use that pronoun because it's a habit. Created this whole universe, and it is so awesome. And I know how big that is, and I know he created, and it's that the sort of definition of Christ, not Jesus, but Christ is in creation and everything that is. That so we are a little small, but I think that I can gather the crumbs under the table. I can eat in the banquet hall. I can,
Right.
so that there's some things that do make you smaller
Right.
than I think God and Jesus want us to be. I've lost my point, but I hope that's a different point.
What I was talking about is about how you expected to be, it is a great point, expected
Yeah,
to be judged, but it didn't actually happen, did
it
it?
didn't happen. So thinking that I would have put myself in the place of that person who could do the absolutions, in the place of the rector, and that's what some Protestant churches have become Protestant for, is so that there's not that person in between,
Right.
that that you can speak directly to God. So I thought, they're not going to like this because I'm actually doing this. I'm not going through the minister to be healed.
You're
I'm
connecting directly with God and
I'm
the
connecting
energy.
direct, and that other people might. Uh, and I have heard it actually in my church from a fellow choir member making some comment because on the way to church one day, a friend of mine was in a car accident.
Oh,
It was for a choral thing that wasn't a church related choral thing. We just happened to be there. And somebody else took this girl aside. She was shooken up. She wasn't physically injured. And said, "Here, let me do some Reiki on you." I didn't even know she was a Reiki person. I said, "All right." She beat me to it. She did that. And a fellow from my church made some sort of comment about it as being off, or this is crazy or woo woo kind of thing. And I thought, no, it's not. So I do feel a little judged. And I've actually said a couple of things in the past. So he knows now that I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I think that he's a lovely man. I was really quite shocked that he would say that, but perhaps it was ego. I don't know. I know it was ego. So you do get that judgment.
but it seems to
So
me that somebody you expected to judge you didn't at all.
didn't. And that was my rector. She
Yeah.
asked me to be a church warden, which is the chair of the vestry, which runs the church. And so she came to my house to ask me because it's a big job. And so I said to her, "I have to tell you something before we do this. You need to know that I'm a Reiki practitioner." And I just sat there waiting for it. And she looked at me and she said, and I've known her for about 40 years. She looked at me and said, "That's really cool." And apparently her sister-in-law, who's married to a minister, is an energy worker. She works with, she's a physiotherapist.
Wonderful.
And she thinks it's fantastic and wants to learn a little bit more about it, which is good. But it was such a burden was lifted. The burden was my imagination and
It's
something that
funny.
I gave myself. Yeah.
I did the same thing, and when I saw my priest, the priest who baptized our children and who was present at my marriage, my husband is Catholic and I was raised Protestant. And I said in another podcast, but my family used to say, don't marry a French boy, don't marry a Catholic boy. And his family used to say, don't marry an English girl, don't marry a Protestant girl. It'll never work out. And it's coming on 26 years now that it's worked out.
Yep.
But when I ran into Father Monty, he said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I don't know how your Pope feels about this." And he said, "Oh, it doesn't matter." And I told him, and he just said, "That's fantastic." He said, "Tell me a little bit more about it." And he couldn't have been more supportive. And it's interesting, isn't it? So I kind of wonder, sometimes we are truly judged, and it's usually by people who don't understand, who just don't understand it and maybe have some fear around the things that they don't understand, or maybe some misconceptions or so on. But I was actually, when I did the work and stopped expecting to be judged, I found that I wasn't judged as much. And the world has changed too. When I started teaching in 2011, you said Reiki, people looked a little concerned and backed away. And they might even make the sign of the witch as they're backing away and protect themselves. But I noticed in time that so many people became open to it. And in fact, now when you say Reiki practitioner, almost everybody knows somebody who does Reiki and has some, understanding. So tell me a little bit more about how Reiki fits with your beliefs, your religious beliefs, and how does that go together for you?
Well, I thought it was when I did my level 2 with you, and I think I've told you this lovely story. And with level 2, at that time, we did attunements, and it was probably the most fantastic Reiki experience that I've ever had. It was really a moving experience, and it changed almost everything for me. And part of it was because we made the connection to our spirit guides. And we were in a meditation and I was getting a little perturbed. I sometimes get perturbed in meditations. Ego,
You're not
right?
alone.
I was getting perturbed because you had told me I was going to see my Reiki guide. And so I'm looking and I'm getting black squiggly stuff, which wasn't like the other meditations, which were lovely and colorful. And I thought, it's a spider. Jesus, why am I not seeing? Can you show me who this blob is? And I kept saying, Jesus, I'm praying, show me my thing. So I get home, and after every course that I take, I reconcile what I had learned with my faith and where it fit. So I could explain it because it was different to me, something completely different. I hadn't had a Reiki healing treatment before. This was just going in. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, why didn't you show me my spirit guide? And he's laughing now, and I can feel it on me now because I got this tapping on my shoulder and said, hey, lady, I'm here.
You're asking.
You don't need.
You're talking to me all along. You knew I was your guide.
And I felt quite foolish, but I laughed. And I have had that relationship with Jesus and ever since. And he often laughs at me as
Yes.
well as with me.
Same.
Yeah,
We laugh a lot. He's
yeah,
funny too.
absolutely. Fantastic sense of humor, as well as any spirit that I've asked to help me. If I'm using my dowsing rod or my pendulum or something, they're just making fun of me. And I think it's because I need to trust my own intuition and my own faith. And it's really quite bizarre to me. But I also, and I have to say this, during that Reiki 2 session, we also had an opportunity to speak to our ancestors. And in that class, I also had my daughter with me.
Yeah.
And we had a triangle around us. And one of the people in that triangle was my dad. And this is the man who I had at one point in my life told him that I didn't think that he taught us a great deal about God. And I realized that I wounded him when I said that,
Right.
because we had a little conversation with him that because of your gift, and you probably don't remember, except that I have mentioned it before, that my dad was, at this time, he had just passed in 2008. So it was 4 years later that my father was in the third heaven. And I thought, wow, that blows me away, because I'd never thought about that. And I have since had my dad come to courses, and I've not seen him, but other people in the room have identified him as being present. And I have been able to not dwell on my dad, because I know he is about my father's business. And I don't need to have him on my shoulder, and I don't need to grieve him. And it really changed my whole opinion about death.
Wow.
And so I'm no longer afraid of, I mourn people, but I know it's just me missing them.
Yes.
But I know that they're part of Christ. They're part of creation. They're not here physically. Like, we're just dipped here on earth for a little while, and then off we go to do whatever we're supposed to do. And hopefully we do it well. But it really changed my attitude. I haven't told my sisters that I've had this connection, because I I I feel that it would bother them to a certain extent, but it might not. But it was, and you also told me that my dad said that I was his favorite.
I didn't tell you that. I don't remember. My apologies to your sister. I usually just repeat what I hear.
No. Anyways, it was a bit of a joke, but it was really, that sent me on my way and really changed my beliefs and made me interested in taking courses on end of life care and death doula and that type of thing. And though I haven't used it a great deal, it is something that I'm fascinated with. And I find myself responding differently when I have friends whose parents die, whose friends die. What hurts me is their hurt,
Yes.
because I know there's something else. There's something after that, and you want
I'm
to
just going to
help people with
pause.
that.
Yeah, Justine, I find that I look at death differently as well. And a lot of it for me has been partly what Reiki has shown me, and then partly with what working with the animals
Mm.
has shown me. And it's just a continuation of life. And they say that the most important breaths are the first and the last. And so tell me a little bit about some of the traditions that you followed with Anglicanism, some of the holidays you celebrated, and this sort of thing.
I have two favorite days when it comes to that. Anglican tradition follows a really strict church calendar.
Okay.
And I know friends from different Protestant paths that they don't follow a church calendar, and I find it a little sad. The last day of the church year is called Christ the King, and it is usually around September, sometime September or October, maybe even November. I don't know. I don't have it memorized. But it is, to me, it is just the awesomeness of creation. And they often call it Stir Up Sunday.
Really?
You do things a little bit differently. Perhaps the church gets together afterwards, and sometimes they play games, or when we had a lot of kids in church, it was a big family day, and we did things a little bit differently. But I just like the awesomeness of that service. The other one is one called Pentecost. And the church year is a little weird because it starts, and most people, everybody knows Christmas comes when Christ was born. And then 4 months later, it's the crucifixion and it's Easter. And the rest of the year, there's stuff that's to be done. But one of the things that I love is Pentecost. And in Pentecost, we try to get everybody to wear red because that celebrates the day and the time and the moment when the Holy Spirit comes to the disciples and the apostles.
Okay.
And how that Holy Spirit was breathed into those people and how that spread. And because I'm a member of the choir, I get to sing songs about this. And we have one song that is absolutely ancient, like the words came from 1700, but it's a trilogy, so there's 3 different parts to it, and how the Holy Spirit was breathed onto each person, but they talk about it as being fire lit above each person in the room. And I get chills just thinking about it. Partly because I know it's the holy fire, and
Yes.
partly because when I did my Karuna Masters with Holy Fire, the person beside, again, I was in a meditation where I got nothing. I did get something, but I saw nothing. And the person beside me said, "Don't worry, Justine." I opened my eyes, and the holy fire lit upon every person's head around the room. That was 2019. She said that. And just recently that we were singing this particular song and the particular words, and it is based on the words that are in the Bible, but you could just see it being lit on above everybody's head.
Wow.
And yeah, it is the same thing. It's part of creation, that fire and the spirit that we don't see, that is amongst all of us, no matter what our religious faith is. It doesn't have, as we've mentioned before, Jesus was not a Christian. He was not. People who followed Jesus became Christians, and at some point they needed to, I'm not going to say restrain, but standardize it.
Right, or organize.
And some of it was beautiful. In fact, most of it was beautiful. And others became zealots because of it and did things
I
are
was
horrible.
I was talking, we were I was talking with last week with Tracy about Catholicism, and she was talking about some of the trauma in the Catholic Church and it's been in the news about just child abuse and just horrid things that our Native American brothers and sisters had to suffer from. And I think there's always, in any religion or spiritual tradition or any organization, there's always people that will take advantage, or that will not always come from the best place. And I think that's what creates religious trauma, and that kind of leads into my question for you because
Mhm.
I did struggle with religious trauma. I struggled with having been raised as a Christian and
Mhm.
then realizing that Christianity had been responsible for things like the Crusades and the witch hunts and the Inquisition and things of that nature. I actually had to really step away from it for a little while. And as I sorted this out, and that's where you brought me back to it, thankfully. But I had to step away from it, and my religious trauma was strong enough that I couldn't even use the word God for a very long
Mhm.
time. And I do use that word again now, not because it's a better word than any other word. It's the one that's the most familiar to me because the one that I was raised with. And so, therefore, once I healed my religious trauma, I was able to take that word back. But until I did, I couldn't. And I was really drawn more to native spirituality and things like that. Did you ever struggle with any religious trauma in your journey, or has that been largely non existent?
I think that there is some somewhere, but for the most part, brought upon myself.
Okay.
Again, that just from reading and my expectation. Again, my family, I don't know that my mother was baptized. I don't think that she was. And in the Christian tradition, that's a very important thing. Um, my father said, we have three girls in my family, and my eldest daughter was baptized. But my sister, Liz, and I were not. And my father told me that it was because he felt we needed to find our own place and follow our own religion and make the choice for ourselves. And I really respected that.
That's very liberal.
Yeah, it's
Because
very
I
liberal.
think we're
Yeah,
about the same age. That's very
yeah,
liberal for the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I appreciated that, but I also had the opportunity to make that choice. And my sister, my middle sister, has not. I know that the choice is always there with her, and it used to bother me a whole lot that she wasn't baptized, but it doesn't bother me now
Mm,
because I know that's an important part, and I know that it's part of washing ourselves clean and accepting Jesus and accepting the Holy Spirit. But I know she'll get where she needs to be in her own path. So
yeah.
I don't need to worry about that. It's her journey, it's her life. And I know that she's not going to be condemned because of it.
No.
Baptism can come in many different forms, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a certain body of water, a certain time, with certain words said.
I think there's
Um,
many ways to get there.
yeah, many ways to get there. And I think that's important to know when it comes to world religion.
Mhm.
There are many paths to get to knowing, and as a Christian, I believe it's knowing Jesus and knowing his story and his beliefs and what he taught us and the crucifixion at the end, what that means. There are other ways. In fact, Jesus even said that. There, this guy's preaching something else, but he is talking about what I represent. It's coming from another way. So we don't condemn him. We let him do that because the end result will hopefully be the same. I don't think he said that exact quote, but that's what he meant. But it's it uh, it all works out.
And
It
I
does.
think that everybody gets there in their own way, and I think everybody's doing their best. and that's okay. And even we will be interviewing in this series atheists and agnostics, and hopefully I'll be able to find some to interview because I find that point of view fascinating as well. And they are also included in the world
Hmm.
peace grids. So I think
Hmm.
everybody gets there their own way. How would you say, Justine? I'm just thinking about one of the things you said about the holy fire, like the fire coming down, and that's to me that's a verse in Acts 2, chapter 2 of the Christian Bible, which talks about the fires licking down from the heavens and
Hmm.
going around them. And in fact, it's in the part about the Pentecost.
Yep.
And I've equated that with holy fire as well. And I've
Yep.
also been aware that the fire, the holy fire, the spiritual fire exists not only in Christianity, it
Hmm.
exists in just about every major world tradition. Our Native American friends have their spiritual flame
Hmm.
and fire as one of the four elements. Our Zoroastrianism has the fire. Hindu, it exists everywhere. And so, would you describe or would you explain that Reiki has actually helped you and
Hmm.
brought more depth to your spiritual understanding or your religious
Oh yeah,
observations? Yeah.
it definitely has. It opened my heart
Mm.
and my mind. When people would talk about chakras, I think, what? But I have also taken courses back in university on acupuncture and all the nodes and where those are and how you work with them. Because I was a little curious because it sounded a little iffy to me. And how knowing what the chakras are, where they are, and how they work with. So we have a one Asian type of structure of energy in the chakras. Then we have acupuncture, which came from a Chinese background. Then we have Reiki, which deals with our hands. It's all moving energy within us. It's a different circulatory system than our lymph nodes or our blood systems. And hard to track, but they have seen some of this in different photograph techniques. But it really has opened my mind to there is so much energy. You can feel it. I felt it before I had Reiki, but I didn't know what it was in my hands. And just to be able to know what it is and use it and intend it, I would never have had that before. Would never have known what the heck it was. It's just hot hands, you know.
Right.
But now it's not just my hands. I feel it. And what used to take a couple minutes to do once we had the holy fire, it was almost instantaneous. Now this with this world peace, it's different. It's a little rougher to me, but it almost, you
It,
don't feel it go out, it kind of zips in.
yeah.
It's an amazing, mind blowing that I can actually intend this to help people.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing sessions with people and they're saying, I have had people who have said, I didn't feel that back when I was level two-ish and thinking about myself, and the ego was getting in there and getting in my way. And now I do meditations when I do these. And even before I started adding meditations, once I got my holy fire, people are just kind of woo. They either just feel completely relaxed or they're actually feeling the energy go through them. And it blows my mind that little old me, little quiet Justine, could actually channel the Holy Spirit, the Holy Fire, and everything that God wants this person to have
Yeah.
through me.
Yeah.
I feel very humbled, but I also feel very empowered. And the person that I have seen in my dreams, the me that I've seen in my dreams, is something that is not a person belonging to a specific faith. It's a very powerful, sort of tribal person with strong armor, with a job to do. And it scares me. But it is very, very empowering.
Yeah.
With no ego. It's nothing but miraculous to me, but it is being part of creation, part of that Christ, of what the rocks, the trees, the animals, the whales, the you and me, and inanimate objects that God has put down here, or wherever he puts whatever he puts, that we're all part of that. And sometimes it makes Christianity very small. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Not unimportant, but not
Just part
as
of the whole.
important. Yeah.
Part of the whole.
Yeah.
And I know when I do work with Jesus as a guide, and that's not because of my Christian background.
Mm.
I actually deliberately didn't work with him as a guide. And when Reiki was showing me that I was to change and to work with Jesus as a guide, I resisted it very strongly. And now gosh, I love working with him. I find him very non-denominational. But I remember asking a question right at the beginning of him. I said, listen, let's get something straight right from the start. Are you really the Son of God? And because I did have difficulty with this one person is the Son of God and whatnot, and just some of the exclusion within the religion, and as I understood it. And he said, yes, I am. And just, I always love when I'm shocked by the answers I receive through intuitive conversation like that, because then I know I'm not making it up. And I was shocked. And he said, and so are you, and so is everyone else. And I realized I said, oh my gosh, that is true. We are all the children of God, regardless of how we express that or choose to worship it or be aware of it, regardless of the traditions that we follow. We are all children of the source of the Spirit. And so I thought that was so beautiful. And I do like working with him now.
Yeah.
And it's not a Christian connotation, and he has said to me, no, I wasn't Christian. And I thought, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's a bit shocking when you first realize that. But I must say that, because I think that I was probably within your first year or so
You were.
of teaching.
Yeah.
And I knew when in my first class, just listening to you, and there's some things that were a little controversial to my thoughts, but what went through my mind is that you were blessed. There was something very special about you. And I have, with great joy, watched your journey. And I realized that I'm on a journey, and we're going to keep evolving. And I remember at one point thinking to myself, I am here for you, Pam, and you are here for me.
Yes.
And we're like going like this through a journey and going in different directions. But every evolution, every course that I've taken, there's been a slight change. And I always think, yes. And it's not towards Christianity. It's just, I'm amazed by the evolution of you. I'm amazed at the potential of all of us being able to move on a journey and think about where we're going.
Wow.
It blows me away, and I'm very pleased that I get to go through this journey. We haven't spent a lot of time with each other, but go
Lately.
through this journey with you. And I know that all your students feel that way. Well, maybe me more than anybody, but I'm just in awe of that. It has helped me grow watching you. And yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't feel like I deserve that. That is so beautiful. Thank you.
No
I
problem.
I feel that Reiki brings an evolution to us all,
Yeah.
and whatever that looks like for each of us, I think that it's exactly right for each of us,
Mm-hmm.
remembering that we all have a different perspective and therefore a different way that we need to connect or understand or whatever. But I think, thank you, Justine. What a
No
beautiful thing for
problem.
you to say. Is there anything you'd like to add before we move into our closing prayer today?
Just to really be open, to have, I really want to encourage any of your listeners to let themselves be open, to try, if there is trauma, if there is the traditions that are hard to get around, to to maybe get out of their own way and think about and go back and ponder. And there is an article in this section's of the year's, I think it's a summer edition,
Of the Reiki News
on
Magazine.
of the Reiki News magazine on evangelical Christianity and Reiki. And there are some really eye-opening things in it.
Yeah.
Some that I found a little confusing, but it's because I was interested in the beginning part, but it's very thought-provoking. And so I
I
encourage
thought
people
so
to
too.
take a look at
Yeah, I thought so too. And I think
it.
that Reiki and Christianity goes so beautifully together. And certainly it helped heal a lot of what was keeping me separate from it. And so and you were a big part of that. So you were there for me as much as I was there for you. So thank you. Well, guys, I think we're going to just move into our final prayer today. And so, once again, I'm going to invite everyone to bring your hands together and your thumbs at your heart. And I just want to thank Justine so much for sharing her experiences with us today. And just activating your Reiki energy and breathing in the light that's all around you, the light of Reiki, and the unification consciousness that makes us all one. And just imagine your heart touching the heart of every other listener of this podcast today. And knowing that regardless of our beliefs, we are all pure love at the core of our being. And I invite you to place your hands comfortably on your body, on your heart if you feel guided. And just giving yourself Reiki. And just embracing that openness. We are so blessed to live at a time where there is freedom of expression, including freedom of religious expression. There was a time not long ago, as short of time ago as the 1970s, when people would be oppressed for their religious traditions and beliefs. And we are so blessed to live at a time, an age of the inner authority, where we get to choose. And sometimes the religious or spiritual traditions confine us or make us feel confined or held or closed. And if you've ever felt that way, I invite you to just release those fetters and the confining feelings. And just understand that each of us is free to be who we are within whatever container we choose. And we're just going to stay here for a while just so that you can feel ease and comfort and freedom. Freedom of expression, freedom to be your authentic self within whatever containers you may have chosen to observe or to use to define yourself. And we'll stay here for a few moments today. As we feel the bindings release from us, we realize that all of the containers are connected. We are indeed connected with every other person on the planet. We're connected with the planet itself and the animals. And we're connected with our Creator, whatever name we choose to call them. And we release any limiting beliefs that we have placed upon ourselves to the contrary. And we release any injuries or traumas that we may have sustained as a result of those limiting or exclusive beliefs. And we just embrace the freedom of that, the freedom to express ourselves in whatever way we choose, the freedom be who we are, within the containers that we choose. And we honor and respect our ancestors who didn't have as much freedom as we do, as many opportunities to learn. We honor the base that they gave us from their attempts to connect with Source. And even if we have chosen differently, we are still a product of their choices. Their choices made us who we are, and we honor and appreciate them. Once more embracing that freedom that we have the luxury of experiencing today. The freedom to be who we are and the beauty that occurs when Reiki can come together with our spiritual and religious traditions in such a beautiful way. We are so blessed to be of a lineage of light bringers who are creating wellness on the earth today, and that begins with you creating wellness within you. Thank you for the light that you are unto the world. God bless and namaste. Thank you so much, Justine, for being with us today, and I just want to send a special thank you to the listeners. I hope you're enjoying this series as much as I am and learning as much as I am as we go through it. It's just an honor to be with you in this. Have a beautiful week. Yes. Blessings.